Good evening. It's November 28th, 2023. And in this Outside the Class series, we're continuing to study of a person that has fascinated me since I picked up the Bible. It's Jonah. Tonight, we're going to continue our reflections on challenging God with Rabbi David Fohrman from Aleph Beta. On TheDustyFeet.com, the Outside the Class section, we have the Challenging God source video set up for review. Because the purpose of Outside the Class is for you to listen to the in-class lecture first. That would be in the source video playlist. Because with this way of doing things, you can watch the video before we begin chatting. We still hope to keep these to around 15 to 20 minutes or so. Easy to catch and easier to catch up on. So we're going to continue our Challenging God series with Escaping God on Outside the Class on the Dusty Feet. And before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, then that's when you click the subscribe button. Because the reminders, they're just there to help you. But also, if you think these might be useful to others, it's when you click the like button. Because that is the way that YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. Challenging God. Escaping God. You know, we ended the last episode with that nightmare scenario, yeah? God forbid. Imagine that someone really close to you, a child, a sister, a brother, they were the victim of a terrible crime, the victim of something so truly horrible at the hands of a brash and malicious attacker. Then the judge says, look, I've spoken with the defendant. He's willing to come by your home for a drink one night. He's going to offer you his apologies for what may or may not have occurred on the night of May 12th. But I'd like you to call a press conference and just dismiss all the charges. Because it's time to let bygones be bygones. Move on. Except there was one change. Because the judge was not a human judge. It was God. Master of the universe. He comes to you and he says, call a press conference. Dismiss the charges. This is the Lord signing out. Then you wake up. It really was God. God is telling you to drop the charges. So why is this nightmare worse than the original scenario where there was a human judge? Because in the previous scenario, as you walk away from the courtroom, you can say to yourself, judge is nuts. I can soothe myself. I can placate myself. But here, there's another judge. There's a judge in heaven. And then justice will ultimately be done. It may not be done in the world, but it will be in the next. There is still justice in the universe. You know, we may have been wronged and we might even be culpable at times, and that might make it hurt even more. But then the second scenario presents itself. And we can't give our placating response. Because God's heavenly court, it's the Supreme Court. And if God comes down himself and tells you to convene a press conference, it means there's no justice. As you wake up in the morning, what do you want to do? That's when the rabbi pulls out the mirror in the story. The brutal truth rises to the surface. You'd want to run away. Very far away. As far as you could possibly go. And probably you're looking for a country with no extradition processes. You want no part of this because somehow, if this is true, life doesn't matter anymore. If there's no justice, why bother? Nothing counts. Then the rabbi brings us the truth in the scenario, right? Because this courtroom scene, the one before us, it's very, very real. Jonah had that nightmare. God, he does come to Jonah and he says, people of Nineveh, those guys over there, the really bad ones, those ones that wronged you so deeply, even if you had culpability with it, I want you to go and accept their apology. So, Jonah, can you really picture it now? Because it's a bit more now visceral to you, isn't it? Because now you can really see yourself in his sandals. You can see us. Because his or our response would then be, and that's it? They've done all these terrible things, and then they get to say a few words, that whole repentance phrase, and then it's over? What they've done doesn't matter? There's no consequences for that? Remember, Jonah is the son of truth. We hear ourselves? Where's the truth in that? So Jonah wants to run away, but not just run out of town to take a break, process it all. He wants to escape God. Deep down, he probably knows that he cannot escape God, but he feels like he has to run. It's a base response to a more visceral issue. Yeah. Because remember the initial question: why does Jonah run away? Now we seem to see an answer, because Jonah's not running away from the mission. He's running away from God. Jonah does not want to be a part of the world where God is not truth. So he goes down to Jaffa, gets on a ship. There's a storm. The text, the Hebrew text, it tells us something interesting. It gives us more insight on the down. At the peak of the storm, Jonah goes down to the bottom of the ship. Take a nap. So imagine yourself on a 4th century BCE Mediterranean wooden ship at the height, the peak of a divinely mustered up storm. Huge waves thrashing and pulsing about, howling, shuddering winds tossing all to and fro. Would you be able to sleep? There's Jonah, sleeping like there's no tomorrow. Storm? Storm is God. The storm is talking to Jonah. Hey, Jonah, we have to talk. I chuckled again as I thought about it, because he runs away again, down into the hull of the ship. He's closing his eyes. Because as for me, I pictured either an ostrich with his head in the sand, or really more like a little kid with his fingers in his ears so he can't hear his father calling. I'm not talking to you. If you're not going to let me run away on a ship, if you're going to follow me with a storm, I'll run away to sleep. Jonah's second flight away from God. Then along comes the sea captain. He wakes him up. You crazy? What are you sleeping for? All hands on deck. Chop, chop. Everyone is praying to their God. So join us up top and pray to yours. Again, this man of God, anything but. No prayer. Not a single one. But the one that's called by God, but he's running from God. He wants no part. He is not talking to him at all. This is not what he wants. It's God's fault we're here in this nightmare. You're going to abrogate justice. You're the Supreme Court. I have nothing to say to you. So finally, the sailors are at a loss, and they decide to cast lots to see who's responsible for the storm. Interesting thought for us. But hey, work for them, because the lots, they do fall on Jonah. So they ask, what are we going to do with you? Jonah's answer? Toss me overboard. Why does he say that? Can't be that he knows about the fish, so that's out. Maybe he's thinking, I go there, I die. That'll work for me. Down in the ocean. God, if you won't let me run away down to Jaffa on a ship, and then run away down into the hull of the ship to sleep, I'm going to run away down in the ocean unto death. Third time down, third time's the charm. I'll literally do anything to get away. But it's God we're dealing with, and it's us he's trying to reach. So the fish comes along, swallows him whole. So then the Rabbi Fohrman brings up a midrash. And I love the banter of the sages. They have pondered these scrolls for hundreds, even thousands of years, and they have some creative thinking. Because the sages, they say something very strange when they looked at this story, right? Because they postulate that there's actually two fish. Bite? Unintended. Tell me more. Because the first time it says fish in the text, it's dag, D-A-G, it's the male fish. But the second time it says the fish is called daga, D-A-G-A-H. It's a female fish. So the rabbis, they're bothered by this discrepancy, and some of them come to the conclusion that there were two fish, a male and a female. Now it's a creative story, with Jonah not praying in the male fish, so it spits him out. He's swallowed by the female fish. Female fish appeared to be pregnant, so there was not much room, and that's when Jonah prayed his prayer inside of the female fish. Why are the rabbis driving us crazy with such a strange story? The answer is that the Midrash is speaking to us allegorically into the deep meaning of what's going on. Because the rabbis, they saw the same textual patterns you and I are seeing, his 3 times running away, once onto the ship, once into sleep, and the third time unto death. Rabbis just pick up the theme we're seeing. Jonah was even running away in the fish. He was not going to talk to God until there was literally no more room. No more physical room, no more spiritual room. It was at the end of his proverbial rope. And only then did Jonah speak with God. So what did Jonah say to God? I called out of my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. I cried for help from the depth of Sheol, and you heard my voice. For you had cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the current engulfed me. All your breakers and billows passed over me. So I said, I have been expelled from your sight. Nevertheless, I will look again toward your holy temple. Water encompassed me to the point of death. The great deep engulfed me. Weeds wrapped around my head. It's an extremely vivid experience. So Jonah had come to a stark point, and he realizes, it's more like admitting, thinking's one thing, saying's another. He has slammed the door on God. God on one side, Jonah on the other. And then Jonah realizes, I have no right to think that you would ever look back towards me. I've run away 3 times down. Why would you still keep looking for me? But he realizes that God, even in spite of all of that, God still chose to save him. Now Jonah realizes too, he wants to see the holy temple again. Life is better than death. Then Jonah says a phrase that only in Hebrew did it sound out to me. Yeshuata la Hashem. Yeshuata la Hashem. Salvation is to God. It's a prayer of thanksgiving. God did hear Jonah. He did save him. And Jonah is grateful. But remember a while back, I also mentioned what I called the half-hearted prayer, that it's missing something. It's not a full heart prayer. It's missing something very important. Jonah, he's talked about himself, his own skin, but his mind, and I'll argue his heart, the other half, it hasn't changed. He has not admitted he was wrong. There's still no teshuvah, no repentance. nothing from him. Yes, he tried to make it right with God, very selfishly, but his perspective hasn't changed. There's something else that hit me this time around, and it hadn't jumped out at me before. Yet I have no response. I have no idea what it means. It's just this: that God hears Jonah, he hears his prayer in the fish. God does not talk to Jonah until he spit out of the fish. Don't know if it means anything. Just stood out at me. But Jonah's on the beach, fresh off his "my bad for running" speech. Now he's breathing on dry land. God reminds Jonah, it's time to go to Nineveh. Accept the apology of this terrible aggressor. The nightmare is coming true. So what do you make of all this? Because we seem to have an answer for the first question. How does this connect to everything at the end? Because what's going on with Jonah and his shed, right? His sukkah. What's more about this big leafy plant and the worm? So we need all this to come together, right? Right here at the end. And we need to see why the scroll of Jonah is such a profoundly meaningful text to us, right? And need to remind us of something that we mentioned in the first series. Not about the fish. So we need to tie this together. We need our red strings coming together. So our next episode is going to help with that. Challenging God, justice, and compassion. We'll be wrapping up this whole series with the next episode, but it's going to end up being a bit longer. So I'm going to use the Dusty Feet to bring this all together. So that's going to be on Thursday, December 7th. It's in 9 days, because the Sons of the Father is this Thursday, November 30th. So, hey, thanks for being with us tonight on Escaping God with Outside the Class. The Dusty Feet.